It's the OVGA podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Hey.
Thanks.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
So today we're going to be doing a bit of a roundup for the Heritage auction coming up Friday the 23rd, Saturday the 24th. So we're shooting today on a Sunday. Hopefully we'll get this out early in the week, a couple days before the lots go live. Before we dive in, of course, it's me, Sanford, Dan, and Coleman, three of us today. And certainly you can find us, the Facebook group that we run, Original Video Game Artwork Collectors, and certainly the website, originalvideogameart.com. So in total today, for this Heritage auction, there are 33 lots. There are 9 primary lots on that Friday of the signature auction, and then another 24 on Saturday. So we're probably going to walk through those 9 primary ones, and then we'll bounce around a little bit for Saturday, see what we want to discuss, and kind of where the conversation goes. But hopefully that gets us started. Dan, Coleman, anything before we jump in?
Well, I guess just, in general terms, if there's, an overall comment I'd make, I'm just kind of interested to see where the market takes us right now. Like there's some indicators to kind of say, maybe things are kind of starting to poke back up a little bit. There's also indicators to say things are going to stay down for a while. Like it's a bit of a, funny time and trying to make any predictions or prognostications, which is where we can end up looking stupid if we put a number out that's like wildly incorrect to the high or the low, right? But we're going to do it anyway because I don't know why. So, so I'm interested to see where things are at kind of on that front. And I guess my overall guess, if I had to make one, is that, maybe it's a time for mixed results. Maybe there'll be a couple results that kind of make you go, wow, and a couple things that slip through the cracks, but we'll see.
So you know what last time, so this is February 2024 Heritage Signature Auction for video games. The last big one that had a lot of video game art was January 2023. And kind of the takeaway from that one was that $5,000 cutoff. Everything above $5,000 seemed cheap. We all thought it should have gone higher, but that was a mental number for people. And everything below $5,000, I think people were kind of paying up for. I bought a Greg Martin Sega Genesis advertising piece, and all in, I probably paid about $3,700 or something. Whereas you had box art ending for $6,000, and that delta was so small, right? And I'm happy with my purchase, but that was the kind of mental number about a year ago. So it'd be interesting.
I couldn't agree more. That was absolutely the case back then. And I guess the one other auction that's had a decent amount, I think it was 10 or 15 lots or something, was Adam Harvey's showcase auction that he had with his NWC and prototypes and other things like that. There was I want to say about 15 art lots in there.
Yeah.
And there are things, it was more like a 10K cutoff, right? Like everything was kind of 10K and below. And there wasn't like any home run, big ticket, should have gone for 20 or 30K pieces. Like I think everything or almost everything went for value and sometimes good value. So, which are the two ones out, right? Like we had a soft one in January. I think Adams was around, what was it? Was it August or something like that? Yeah. Okay. So we're in the same time frame. And, now here we are in Feb. So, hard to say. I think maybe part of the January result last year, maybe there was just too much for sale at once at that time. And this 33, this is kind of in the, I'm expecting stronger than last January, but I'm not sure where overall.
Yeah. And the last thing, we'll keep having last things and we'll get pieces pulled up, but whatever.
Yeah.
The 33 number is also maybe a little deceptive, right? There's a couple pieces later, concept art, storyboards, much more minor, kind of preliminary pieces. And I think some of this is just the nature of the auction business, right? And looking at the client service and things like, oh, hey, this thing's got a video game nexus. Let's hold this off for a few weeks or for a few months to put it into this signature auction, when otherwise maybe that would have gone in a weekly, right? So I think kind of a building up of certain lots. But Anyway, I'm excited. Coleman, do you want to
Yeah.
load up that first Friday lot?
Let's pull them up. Here we go.
And you know, Sanford, I think there is something to that. Like I I didn't have a full conversation with anybody at Heritage about that, but I think just in some passing comments, I get the sense that a couple items were saved to kind of pull together to sell at one time to make it more of a broad offering at one time. So I think you're onto something there.
Well, I think part of it too is, and this is actually what's going to get exciting for some of these that we're talking about, is thinking about like where are these pieces coming from, right? And so for a handful of them, you know, we may know the consigner. You know, one of the Archon 2 pieces was consigned by someone in the Facebook group, right? And he said, "Hey, I've consigned this. I've sent it in." He brought that to everyone's attention. So he's okay. I know where that piece came from. This first one here, we actually start out with 4 lots from Peter Bollinger, 4 on Friday, I think 1 on Saturday. Those were all consigned by the artist. You know, a couple pieces we recognize from other collectors, but then there's some of those more minor pieces have absolutely no idea at all. And that's kind of what gets my mind thinking about, oh, maybe, right, Heritage kind of setting that aside to bring us to this auction.
Yeah, and the Ghoul Patrol we know is consigned by the artist too. So some of the probably the 2 best pieces and the ones that will probably go for the most are actually direct from the artist. So you know, it's interesting to see artists kind of maybe hearing about or picking up on the fact that they might be able to consign some of these for money prior to collectors really being able to converse with them directly. So. Yeah, so this is an interesting one to start with. Crash and Burn 3DO cover. It's a great little image, you know,
it's not a little image. It's a big
well,
image.
good point. Good point. What are the measurements on it? Isn't it 30 inches or something?
This is 20 by 30, yeah.
20 by 30. Yeah, so that's a lovely size. That is my favorite size, you know, in general for illustrated box art. It's perfect. And, you know, we had a little discussion the other day about, you know, this image and all the flames on the edges and how they were cropped out for the published piece. And it does, you know, it does strengthen the image a little bit with a little bit of the flame cropped out. I do like it better, and I think we all did. But there's a real sense of like those cars are moving fast and like those explosions in the horizon are just kind of coming up off the road. Like there's a lot of dynamic action to this, and so the image is lovely. It's just, you know, it's 3DO is the only problem. I mean, 3DO is a bit of a turd of a system, but it's a lovely image. So, you know, I think people will want it for the image. I think the system it's on might hold it back a little. You know, I don't know how to predict anything in kind of the current environment, but if I had to, I'd say, you know, 1,500 to $5,000, like kind of in that range.
Yeah. Actually, Coleman, we don't have to do it for this piece, but for some of these, as we're talking, I think if you click it once on Heritage, it'll open up into a bigger one.
Yeah.
So we can start to do that. You know, you don't have to go too much further on this one. I will say, yeah, for me, Dan, yeah, the image sells it. Like, yeah, I may end up being a bidder myself, but I'm drawn to. I don't care that it's 3DO, right? The 3DO piece is not attractive to me. But okay, I say at least it's the box art, it's published, and it's pretty cool. This one actually is, I think Crash and Burn was a packing game. So this is like a later retail release. So like this long box,
interesting.
Like this image was actually kind of hard to find online because like a lot of pack-ins that later got a retail release, then they had different art for it. It wasn't out and around. So like that maybe make it a little more collectible for somebody as a potential bidder. I don't care about that. Like you said, I really am just going for it's box art and I like the image and it's an awesome size, 20 by 30.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, Coleman, when you were kind of zooming in and stuff on the image and scrolling around or whatever, I was actually going to say, you know, maybe let's not scroll quite as much because I think it's kind of dizzying or a little distracting, you know, for the viewer. But when we were kind of zoomed in on the city portion of it, like I hadn't done that yet. There's a lot of great detail in that kind of city off in the distance there that I hadn't noticed before. Like the real futuristic kind of cityscape there. The road's almost vertical. And then you've got I thought there were explosions in the background. That's actually cloud, and then there's the skyscrapers going the other way. It's pretty good detail there in the background. To go with the good detail in the foreground on the cars. So, yeah, I mean, it is very well done. He's he's a good artist, and I think as we talked about in the group, there was I think about 9 X-Men pieces for trading cards and stuff that he also consigned that sold recently at Heritage, and I think those went for kind of like $1,000 or 2 or 3, kind of on average.
Nothing broke $2,000.
Yeah.
The highest about 1,800, a few around 1,500, 2 or 3 below 600.
Were they published? Were they? I didn't really take a look.
They were Fleer. Fleer would do these card sets for Ultimate Spider-Man. These were his were X-Men, some were Spider-Man, one was Vampirella. But I think they were all published Fleer cards. And it's kind of cool when you realize, doing I think a lot of them were, 15 by 20, which is smaller than this at 20 by 30, but pretty big, realizing it was going to be a teeny little trading card.
Right. Yeah, cool.
Coleman, you want to pull up the next one?
Yes, I do, but this is just loading here.
So there's 4 Bollinger pieces, and 4 on Friday, 1 on Saturday, and so he actually
Poor T-Rex, his arms are too small to eat cereal. Poor guy.
This is the one that we were kind of perplexed, right? This looks more like a Saturday piece to me. It's Sega Genesis in name only, right? It is from Sega Genesis Secret 6, some unofficial book, maybe Prima Games. Cool image. It's 19 by 29. It's about the same size. But it's really got nothing to do with Sega, other than the fact that it's being said, this is for Sega. These aren't characters. It's not a specific game. But it looks nice, right? So
it's an odd choice of elements to put together, I guess. You would think that if you were putting together like a Sega book cover, that maybe you'd, have different, like some of the Atari montage pieces. They've got they'll have like a figure from a sports game and a figure from a war game and a figure from a chess game. And, you don't really get that here, but it's still kind of interesting. The figure looks kind of cool to me and somewhat like reminiscent of something, but I can't put my hands on it. I don't know if it looks like Battlestar Galactica or what that's reminding me of, but it's a nice enough image. It's okay, but as you say, like there's not a kind of direct game box correlation there. It is for book cover. The book cover the subject is Sega Genesis, so it's neat, but I would have thought this is more of a Saturday item rather than a Friday.
All right, so next Bollinger that's coming up, it's probably one we'll talk a bit about. And one thing I did kind of want to mention is, so Peter Bollinger, he didn't do a lot of traditional box art. There's these 3 I'm aware of, maybe another 1 or 2, but he did a lot of digital work. He was right on the cusp. Like he adopted digital very early. So like Panzer Dragoon Zwei for the Sega Saturn. That's a digital one that he did. There's another game. I'm looking down at my notes here, but Iron Man and Exo Man of War in Heavy Metal. This image is on like every system possible, right? That's a digital image. That's Peter Bollinger's work. Mickey's Speedway USA for N64.
Right.
He just did so like very early digital stuff. It's kind of cool that like that's his work. So you kind of wish he had gotten into the industry just a few years earlier and how much cool work he could have done. But he was the go-to digital guy for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to get a Disney contract, that's pretty solid. You know, you gotta know your stuff.
That's true. Only the better guys tended to get those. That's right. Yeah, Sanford, I know that, like, is there anything you want to say about, the condition? I can jump in if, but I want to let you start on this.
So it's damaged. And no, I mean make it simple, right? And so Heritage describes it. There's water damage by the top quarter of it, and they note some mold damage. Maybe a little black right there at the top. And part of what we'll be able to talk a little bit about today is, I did get a chance to talk to Peter Bollinger a couple of years ago. He sent me pictures of the Gex and another couple items, and all of which he ended up sending in. And, I think Coleman later will be able to bring up a separate image that Peter sent me of the Gex one, and it looks very different to the eye. I think is this the picture here, Coleman?
Yep.
And so, taken on, I don't know, whatever camera it was, I think the damage shows a lot easy. You can pick up on the damage very easily. I remember when Peter sent me the picture a few years ago, I sent it to you, Dan, and I was just in love. Whoa, it's Gex. This is incredible. And Dan's first reaction was, oh, is it damaged up there? And I was so focused on the image, I wasn't seeing it. And part of the reason we're talking about this and pulling up this other image as well is, the way that some of these images might have been shot professionally for the auction site, different details show through more than others. And so we've talked in the past about, for example, Bill Morrison will do these blue line pencils for The Simpsons and those characters. And those blue line pencils look so washed out on Heritage. And being able to have received a separate picture of Gex and looking at here, also like some of that damage that was more visible in the personal picture at the top right isn't as visible. And this is not a Heritage hiding anything, right? It's just kind of the exposure and the way the pictures are photographed. Very good detail. You can zoom in and see the errors. They put it in their description. Or not errors, the damage. But it is something where, you've got the mold, you've got some of the water damage, and then one that isn't discussed in Heritage but got noticed in the Facebook group, and that's why you've seen kind of Coleman bringing up some of these images, and I'll probably stop talking and turn it over to someone else. But I think there is some sun fading to the image, right? And but I'll pause there.
Well, yeah, because when I first saw the Heritage image of it, my first reaction was, and I know we had seen it before and talked about it before and everything a couple of years ago when you had spoken with Bollinger, but my first reaction, or I guess my reaction the second time around was, it looks dead. Like, it's not, the colors look washed out. And now on your image, where the damage is more noticeable, the colors also look less faded. So, like, my guess is that, given that this is all in the kind of comics department of HA, and they're used to dealing with black and white art, I'm guessing they've just turned up the brightness to like 11, because on black and white art, if you turn up the brightness to 11, there's no colors to mess with, right? It's all just black and white. There's no turning red into pink or anything like that. Whereas here we're seeing some of that. So I think some of the issue is with the photography, as you mentioned, Sanford. There may also be some fading, certainly on some of the published boxes. And Coleman, I'm glad that you had 4 or 5 different versions of the box there, because I could notice on some of them, like, the yellows and the greens are like fluorescent, like they punch you in the face, right? It's really noticeable. But then on the jewel case version of the PS1, and I don't know if you can flip to that, the colors aren't that different than the colors on the photo that you had from Peter Sanford. So I'm left to wonder, is the fading really? Yeah, like, compare that to Sanford's photo. Like there might be some fading, but it's not as bad as all that. Yeah. Like you see those two, the tones and values are kind of in the same family. So, like stop there for a sec. On that's fluorescent. But,
totally.
I know that the publishers would sometimes oversaturate at the printer and kind of change the published image from the original by amping up the color. But on those two, the jewel case versus the photo that we got from Peter, it's not that different. So, there may be some fading, but it may not be that bad, perhaps. And I guess the other thing that comes to mind is that really, like, when we look at the other pieces that Peter sent in, and I'm going totally off script here, guys, because we're all going to talk about how it's faded, and I'm telling everybody how it's not.
Yeah.
But if we look at the other pieces that Peter consigned, there really isn't fading noticeable on any of the other consignments, right? Like everything's still like Crash and Burn, the red's still red. The Killing Time has got those nice deep blacks. There might be some fading. It might not be that bad. What we know for sure is that there's a little bit of water damage in the top and a few little specks of dead mold. That's okay. Like to me, it's not that bad. It's at the top part of the image. You could even crop that out if you were framing it. And I guess, the other thing that has to be said for this piece is that I don't know that there's ever been like a long box PS1 the art for Longbox PS1 game that's ever hit the market. And whether anybody cares about that or not, I don't know, but it is a neat subset in that those are the launch games for the PlayStation, the launch and the earliest games. Yeah, launch and early on games for the PlayStation. And so, there may be somebody out there that put some value to that. I don't know. I mean, it's described as 3DO in the listing, but of course, we know, and as we saw from Coleman's images, that really where it's best known from is PS1.
And Sega Saturn, Sega Saturn less significant than PlayStation, I think, for a lot of people, but both. I think for me, though, the one thing that, and maybe the fading will be not as bad as it was made out to be. I still have a lot of hesitancy, and but knowing whoever walks away with this, knowing that it's a significant title that Gex, a lot of people would recognize for a PlayStation long box, add some significance to it. But I kind of know when if I'm talking about the Crash and Burn piece compared to this one, they're at different price points, right? And so if Crash and Burn sells for $2,000 or something, and you get this big, beautiful 20 by 30 painting, you're not going to be disappointed, right? You'll be like, hey, this is awesome. This is what I paid. I'm happy about it. Gex is, I think, crossed 10K now. Be very curious to see where it goes live. I think if not for the damage, right, it could have been a lot of room for discussion of what its upper bound might be. But I can't shake it in my head if I were to receive this and I paid, say, $15,000 and you get it in hand. And if it's not as good as what you were hoping, you never want to receive a painting and be like, I'm disappointed, right? You want to see it and be wowed. Be like, hey, I don't care what the subject matter was. This is beautiful and I'm happy with it. And that's just a bit of my psychology as I'm looking at a piece like this. If I spend that much, am I going to be really happy when it's in my hand, or am I going to be disappointed?
Yeah, I'd put more weight on the fading in that instance that you're talking about. Like, if it were too faded, that would bring disappointment, where the water damage and the mold, you kind of see, and I feel like you kind of get what you pay for, or you can see it and interpret it in your own way. But the fading, like you said, like the white balance or whatever, the way that they went through this photo,
it's more of a question mark, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We're kind of
mystery.
Yeah, like we're surmising as to what it looks like in person, but it's hard to really know, like, what are those greens and yellows going to look like in person. I will say that, like, the pose on the figure is so charming. Like, it's so wonderfully done. Like, he's got this languid sort of look to him, very relaxed, and like, it's just perfectly, with the outturned knee, and he couldn't look more chill, right? And obviously that's what they were going for with the glasses and all that, the sunglasses. And it's wonderfully posed. It's a great sort of example of his work, I think, in that, like in the same way that Crash and Burn shows dynamic action, this has got just wonderful
Life.
yes, wonderful life, wonderfully animated. Like that gecko looks like he could like come out and slap you a high five or sell you insurance or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, he always had this kind of like association with James Bond. And you know, you've seen the advertisements where there's like a girl in the background or some babe of some sort. I've always kind of had this connection because it came out at a similar time as Austin Powers. So I kind of always put that connection of Gex and Austin Powers, like they're kind of similar characters. Not the same, but you know.
No, I like it. I think the third one was like Undercover Gecko or something, right? They really leaned into that James Bond persona. The last thing here is this is a smaller piece. It's only 9 by 17.
Yeah.
So it's smaller than a comic board. I don't have one to hold up, but I mean, you know, it's small.
Well, that's the image. There's a border as well. So, and one thing I don't like about Heritage's descriptions in this category, to be honest, that they do a great job and everything, but they're inconsistent between talking about board size and image size. So, you know, 9 by 17, okay, but if we look, there's probably an inch on either side. So we're probably talking 11 by 18 board, which is bigger than a comic page. A comic page image is 10 by 15 on a 11 by 17 board.
Yep.
So, you know, so I wouldn't say it's small. I don't think it is smaller than a comic page, but it's in that neighborhood.
Yeah. But it is factually way smaller than Crash and Burn, right? Or Sega Genesis Secret
half
6.
the size, right? Because people have to remember, like 15 by 20 and 20 by 30, like 20 by 30 only sounds like a little bigger, but when you break it down, they both have a 20 dimension, and one has a 15 and the other has a 30. So it's literally twice the surface area, the 20 by 30 versus 15 by 20. So, you know, it's literally twice as big.
So, you know, pull up the killing time next.
Well, hold on. Are we going to give the people are paying the people are paying for predictions, Sanford.
So I think some of the chat are ahead of here. Hey, you know, all right, I'll rewind a little bit, right? On the how are you going to feel when it arrives? And if someone was expecting to pay 20 and they get it for 12, they're probably going to end up being pretty happy with it. I mentally, before I kind of processed the damage and factored that into what I would pay or whether I would be a bidder, 15 to 20 was the thought process. Seeing that, I think the numbers came down more 5 to 10. We've broken 10. I don't think it gets above 15. Maybe it lands around 12 all in. What do you guys think?
I think he's pretty iconic character in the PlayStation realm, you know, and across just the mid 90s across all systems. Recognizable, lovable, playful. You know, it's the fading, but I'd say just short of 15 is my reasonable guess.
Yeah, and you know, the people are paying for predictions, but we're kind of shortchanging them because a lot of the bidding seems to have probably already happened, so we don't have to go too far out on a limb. You know, I don't, you know, it's so hard to guess anything right now, kind of as I said at the top. I mean, I'm gonna say 12 to 20. You know, I could see just as well like getting a bid or two and stopping, or, you know, maybe there are two people out there who say, you know, the hell with it, it's nice, I like it, I want it, I remember it, and it gets you know, it gets higher. So yeah, you know, the people paid for predictions and they're getting their money's worth because they paid nothing. And
there we go.
And yeah, on to the next one.
So what I would say on Killing Time, this is one where when Peter showed it to me a few years ago, he actually never sent me a picture of this. He just found a picture online of, hey, this is the box I did. And 2-3 years ago, I was kind of like, look, well, it's not a console. I don't care. It's PC. I just kind of wrote that stuff off. Seeing it with fresh eyes a couple years later and seeing the original, like, it is a captivating image. I like what they did here. Whether, just like we're talking 3DO versus PC, these aren't where a lot of the focus is on Sega or Nintendo. I love the image. It's a little creepy, but I like
the
it.
image is awesome, and the black background makes the white pop, and then you've got the blood and the purple halo effect and everything. Like, the image is on point. And it's not, and you don't see a lot of kind of dark themed game covers too, so that kind of adds a little something to it too. You don't get a lot of opportunities to buy anything that looks like Stabby McStabs here. But as you said, for PC, but yeah, I love the image. Out of everything in the sale, like, it might almost be my favorite image. Like, it's up there for sure out of everything for sale. As we're talking about it, I'm starting to wonder, okay, he's got the meat cleaver in his hands, right? And he's attacking the guy with a machine gun right away. That seems like, maybe a bad idea if the other guy's got a gun, but okay, he's attacking
Coleman,
with a meat cleaver.
Click and make it bigger, Coleman.
Sure.
Why is the guy who's wielding the meat cleaver already stabbed by meat cleavers? I don't get it. Like, he's like, that's his weapon, but he's been like, unless there's something in the game where, like, he pulls cleavers out of himself. And what's that?
I think that happened long ago. That's probably how he died.
Nice wood texture on the handles there. You see that?
Yeah. It's even got the little metal,
Yeah,
like the blade went all the way through,
Yeah.
as it should.
So the only thing I know about this is Jeremy Bozash owns a different Killing Time painting. His is the actual 3DO box art. And Peter, who did so much other 3DO box art, or not so much, but Crash and Burn and Gex, ended up doing this image, which became the PC box art. Now, I have no idea if, like, Peter did this one for 3DO and they were like, let's save that for the PC audience. No idea what that sequence was. I mean, you do see this on condition, though. I think a little bit of water damage right at top right. You see that white streak across it?
Well, the little white. Oh, yeah. In the black, like, who cares?
And then if you go down about halfway on the right side, Coleman, and zoom in, there's kind of a long crease along the side there. But I think if you're...
I don't see that stopping anybody.
No, I think if you're paying for image, and I think this is a cool way, like, if you like the image, having it not be Sega or Nintendo is great for your wallet. You just, hey, I love it. Hopefully less competition.
What's the size on that one?
I have it down as 25 by 20. So
nice
pretty
size.
good
That's
size.
A good size. Yeah. Yeah, I love the mustache and the goatee and the crazy eyes, and
it's killer.
Really cool. Great expression.
I was just thinking I wouldn't hang it on my wall, or I wouldn't get away with it or whatever, but there is a guy out there that would just totally love this, that would fit in his little horror den of some sort where he watches all his horror movies and stuff, like, has gamed this plenty of hours.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what guys can put up on the walls usually is kind of dictated by who they're married to, and that's okay. Yeah. But it's still one that, if it isn't on the wall and if it's in, a storage box or something, it's still fun to pull out once in a while. And look at the crazy Frenchman here ready to decapitate Mr. Tommy Gun. So, Fun image. So, the people have paid and paid poorly for predictions.
Okay.
I think less than 3K.
I was going to say 2, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm in that range too, kind of 2-3K. Somebody will love it for the image, but maybe won't go bananas paying for it because it's just, like you said, it's PC, so they're probably only going to pay so much. I don't really know how the game
is either.
No, neither do I.
So that doesn't.
Neither do I.
I mean,
maybe Bozash will want to pair them up. Who knows?
Yeah, he's a big horror guy. He's big Resident Evil.
Mhm.
That's
Likes
true.
the killing time because of the horror.
Maybe he could
imagery.
tell us why Stabby McStabs has been stabbed.
All right,
Because
well,
I
Jared,
need to find out after this episode as to why the meat cleaver guy's got meat cleavers in his stomach.
All right, on to the next.
Archon 2. So I used to play this with my brother, and good Lord, it must have been 1986 or something, 1985. I was probably 10, 11 years old. And yeah, I have no memory of the packaging whatsoever. But my brother had it on Amiga, and I used to love playing as the Wraith that had this like super, he was invisible and you could kind of go around the screen. You didn't know where you were, and your opponent didn't either, and you were only visible when you tried to use like your siphon attack that did a ton of damage, but you had to be super close range. So it was a super, super cool early game. Now, you guys, being a little younger than me, likely won't remember it. But to a certain demographic, it's nice and memorable. I do wish that, like, when you look at the published box for it, only that little central image kind of around is that a hexagon or a
Octagon?
I guess it's six-sided.
Oh, yeah,
No,
you're
it's octagon.
right.
It's octagon. It's octagon. So only the area around that octagon basically kind of shows up on the published image. So there's a lot of noise on the original, a lot of kind of almost, not blank space, but just, space that is extraneous to the central image. And yeah, I kind of wish that central image was blown up bigger. I kind of wish it was more reminiscent of the game itself, in that, like, I don't look at that image and think, oh, it's Archon. I kind of have to read the description and remember that's Archon.
Dan, did you play Archon or Archon 2?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
It is interesting. This will almost be kind of a theme today, right? So both Crash and Burn was cropped closer. This was cropped closer.
Mm-hmm.
There's one other one. It's one of the Saturday pieces. It'll come to me later. Where they've kind of done that. We talked about it with the Julie Bell episode. Sometimes it was a good choice, right? Sometimes like the cropping enhances the image itself. So you have a little bit of leeway if you want to frame and crop things that way, but this is beautifully framed. Like, I like the way that it was done.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, the consigner for this one, was on the group, which is great. When I look at the published versions of this image, there's a lot more blue in the background. The steps look red. The cape looks red. Yeah, like there's a whole different level of color saturation. And so again, I'm left to wonder, is Heritage's photography turned up the brightness to 11, making me think it's faded, or is it faded? I was always worried, like as a private collector, when I'd go and find things kind of in the wild, in the outside world, outside of Heritage, if they'd been hanging on someone's wall for a long time, because like in the 80s and 90s, when people framed things, they typically didn't use UV glass. They typically didn't just use archival materials and that kind of thing. And so if they hung up for a long time, like that's a little hard on paintings. They tend to fade if that happens. So I don't know what to make of it exactly in terms of whether there's fading or there isn't fading. But it's a heck of a memorable game. I mean, in terms of those early titles, I love it. I wish the image spoke more to Archon. And looking at that now, like, yeah, that the brightness does seem amped up. Like, I bet it's not as bad in person.
I don't think it is. There's something about that, the published image. It does look just overly saturated. They just want it to pop. It's box art. It's gotta scream at you.
You're right with the reds, but then like the clouds on the left, like there's almost no blue in this Heritage image. and there's quite a bit of blue on the published. And so I just, I don't know what to make of it, but yeah, I think that they have, maybe overbrightened it. Eric Joyner, yeah, the signature. I'd love to know what the runes say. Like those runes have to around the edge of the octagon have to say something, but I have no idea how to read those.
Fun note on Eric Joyner. You told me this a couple years ago, Dan. I can't forget it. Is he's now pretty well known, or he did for a while. Pictures of robots and donuts, and you'll see you'll just Eric Joyner robots, donuts. Several images with that motif, and you'll have like a robot playing ring toss with the donut on a building or something. It's kind of surreal, but it's kind of neat. On predictions, I have a really hard time placing this one. There you go. Yeah, it looks like Coleman's pulling up some of the robots and donuts and Eric Joyner.
There we go.
On prediction, I have a hard time knowing what to make of this. As Dan said it, right? It's a little too early for me. But Archon is a game that was on several systems. It got a NES port. It's known to people. It's well regarded. Dan remembers it. It's PC, but I think if a PC game is memorable, it's kind of right up there with most console box art. Now, Killing Time is one that we're not familiar with, maybe less memorable. Okay, you can downplay it. I could see this. I don't know who the bidders would be, but mentally like a 5K floor for what it is. But I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of my rough guess was, 5K floor and maybe to 10K. And, I don't know if it goes past that. If I think of the significance of the title, I think it should go past that. But it does appeal to an older demographic. And the other thing there is that, what I spoke of earlier, like, I just wish the games like scream or the image screamed Archon to me. I don't really get that. I have to look at the description to kind of know that it is. But so maybe I'm handicapping that unfairly. I don't know. As we've talked about, it's a difficult time to predict things, but I'm in the 5 to 10 camp for now.
I might just, I don't know, 5. I can't say. I really can't.
We'll find out in less than a week.
Yep.
Alrighty. So we're only through 5 of the 9.
Oh, we've got to pick things up here. This was supposed to be a quick episode.
Yeah. Hey, we get talking. I think we're having fun.
Yeah,
right?
that's the issue. Yeah.
Here we go, right? It's Greg Martin. It's a map piece, used Disney Adventures magazine. Good titles, though. Quackshot. I think Castle of Illusion gets mentioned. I think Greg just does lovely stuff. Like all these little motifs, all these characters. I like them. We talk about size, though. This thing is huge. It's 32 inches wide by 20 tall. So that same 30 by 20 size, 32, so a little bigger. But, it's for a map. So it may, I don't know, maybe bigger than people would want for what it is. But it's Greg Martin's work. I like it. I can tell you I'll probably be a bidder because I like his work, and it's as simple as that for me.
Yeah, I used to own it. I know that it looks good in person. I sold it maybe 4 years ago, something like that. So I know it looks good in person. It's a cool piece. It is associated with good titles, promotional material for good titles. So, if someone wants a bit of a Disney piece by somebody like Martin that isn't going to be, 20,000 and up, then this might be a nice target, but hard to say exactly where it goes. I mean, I see $1,000 on the low end and kind of $4,000 on the high end.
Yeah, sounds about right.
I don't disagree with that. Current bid $1 should Place one
I'll
right
buy
now.
that for $1.
I can say that is my $1 bid, so
Nah.
I'll own up to being in the lead on this one.
There we go. Someone's got to do it.
You want to pull up Pitball? So
I like this one.
I'm almost going to kind of start with the numbers before the description, right? I mean, so the last time, January 2023, there were a handful of McGinty pieces, and 2 or 3 of them, ended at right at that about $6,000. Like the Die Hard arcade ended at $6,000, and the Mass Destruction ended at $4,800. God, for how good Mick McGinty was, getting a published box art, this one's for PlayStation at that same price point, seems pretty awesome to me. I'm hoping people are looking in this auction in February, kind of the same eyes as like if you get this for $5 or $6, even if Pitbull's not really a known title, Mick is phenomenal. Great detail. It's a 30 by 20 board, so it's that same nice size that Dan loves. It's a cool image.
Yeah, it's got Coliseum vibes,
I think it's just
Gladiator.
I think the only thing that holds you back is just there's no association for me at all. I'm completely unfamiliar with the image. Up until last year or two.
This is another one where it's cropped a lot on the on the published on the jewel case. Like I think you just see kind of the central image, and that probably helps too. I love as you were kind of zooming in, Coleman, like the quality of the detail on the tiled floor.
I like the drool. Yeah,
like you could just see that in your mind's eye, like the little
reflection here.
Yeah, the inlaid tile.
You know what? We may not have time for it later, but if anyone gets a chance, look at the Saturday piece by Mick, Nitro Racers, and there's 2 pieces in that lot. One is the final painting, one is the preliminary. And if you just saw the prelim, God, he was so fucking good. Like I mistook the prelim to be a final. It's not until you really look at all the detail he did for this floor on Pitball, a lot of other artists might not have done. And a Mick prelim, it looks as good as somebody else's published in the time that they would put in. Maybe it's a bit of an exaggeration, but as you were commenting on the detail on the floor, it was only in that Nitro Racers, the prelim, where there's a lack of detail in the background that you go, aha, that's how I know it's a prelim.
Yeah.
But very, very good work. Everything Mick does.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking $5-6 grand, but I guess we'll see.
All right.
This is a fun one.
Yeah, this is like one I don't want to comment on.
So
it's like a lot of. Go ahead, Sam.
No. All I'll say is that we did talk about it in the group a little bit.
We did. I'm somewhat associated with all of these Roco pieces. This is not mine, but I do know the consigner. Some of the other ones I am partially connected with. We shall say, but this one
Can you say that a little more vaguely, please?
I am a co-consigner.
I'm kind of a co-consigner on the other Rocos, but this one is not mine. But I had Pokemon Gold as a kid, and I played the hell out of that game. I loved Pokemon. I was a total Pokemon kid. I was there from day one. Blue and then onto Gold. So I do really like this image. I think this is a great image. There isn't very much Pokemon artwork out there, game related. I don't even know what there is out there. You guys might know more. I know there's plenty of anime related stuff and even a few card related pieces way hidden in the depths, but not much outside of Japan. So this is a very cool piece, and I was a little surprised that the consigner decided to sell this one, but I hope it makes it to a happy home.
So one thought on that is, I think with this artist Roco in particular, if you look at his figures that are copied from somewhere, they look pretty good. If you want to click it, Coleman, and just pull up just the Pichu and the Ho-Oh, you know, his rendering of the recognizable characters, yeah, they're on model. They look the way they should. If that's the first thing your eye sees, you're pretty happy with it. My first reaction seeing the piece was quite positive, and but as I look, and this is some of Dan's commentary, and we're looking at it, and he may elaborate, but you look beyond the characters and you look at the background, and just the kind of the color selection, the cave motif, it's a little unclear what was being rendered or what the focus was. And I know that just that observation of my first reaction is, oh, the characters look great. And then you reflect on the piece as a whole more. So anyway, as your kind of question of, hey, why would the consignor send it in? One, I think it is a fun piece to test the market with. What is the demand for Pokemon? But maybe a reflection on the image as a whole. I don't know.
You know, I'm gonna take the position that the image in this case really doesn't matter as much as usual, because I think someone buying, like if someone decides to open up their wallet for this, they open it up because it's Pokemon, it's Ho-Oh, and it's Pikachu, and they look on model and they don't care what the background looks like. This is a really tough one because like in game collecting in general, right? Like if something is like a Grail title, but it's for a foreign jurisdiction, it goes for a tiny fraction. Like, does that thinking play out here, or does the thinking that, well, it's the only Pokemon kind of art anything you can get win out? So, is it like 2K or is it like 20K plus plus plus? Like, I don't know. It's so, and, I like and respect the consigner, and I hope it does well for him. I hope it does great for him. I'm not sure. I don't know which kind of mode of thinking kind of wins out, and I guess we'll see.
I think as far as mode of thinking, it's almost kind of like, will the buyer be a game art collector? I don't think so. I think the buyer will be a video game collector who maybe hasn't yet done much with art, but says, hey, I like it. It's Pokemon. I'm going to spend for it. I'm very curious if we find out at the end of the auction who the buyer was. We saw some.
I think a Pokemon collector, card collector. I don't even think a game collector necessarily. Not to change what you said, but
that would be the best case scenario for the consignor, as far as I'm concerned. That Pokemon card collectors or Pokemon art collectors that sometimes spend big money on those pieces look at and go, hey, that fits into my collection. I want that. I'm going to spend big. And that is one totally possible alternative. It's just that if that doesn't happen, then then what? Like big money could show up, but if it doesn't show up, it could go low, is how I see it. So, but to your point, Coleman, like if that happens, if there is card money that goes after it, it could do very, very well.
I think we could compare that to that Super Mario piece that sold recently, the French poster. What was it? The poster cover, or whatever it was.
Poster cover.
There is some similarities there where we didn't really know where it was going to go, and we were all kind of within the right realm of things.
I think.
I think we all guessed around 10 at the time for the Mario poster, and that is around where it ended up. With this, I just I don't know. I don't know,
because like the other, I don't know, the other one had this mystery. What's the usage? At least here we kind of know this is a magazine cover. This is a foreign magazine cover. I know when I bought Frank Sirocco Swap Pro, kind of an offshoot of Game Pro, Frank Sirocco Double Dragon cover on Heritage in 2020
that was nice.
for about $2,500 or something. And I think for magazine art, it's maybe stuff gets above $5. If anything would do it, I think it could be this. This piece has got the enough around it that you could have people not be thinking about it's a magazine cover, it should be in this price box, right? There's enough other factors that could go differently.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably go out and let me be wrong and say I see a ceiling of 5. So unlike Mario, we're all like, yeah, we all think it's 10. You know, I'll go out on the limb on the low end and say 5.
I do like that, and I think the buyer will appreciate that. You know, that the image is pretty much. I don't know if it's a copy exactly, but it's very similar to the published Pokemon Gold box. That is a nice plus. Like, it's not his take on the Pokemon Gold scene, like background accepted. You know, it's pretty much the Pokemon Gold box image. I think that helps.
I think so too. Yeah, I guess my guess is, you know, I am sort of thinking 10K. If it doesn't get that, I won't be surprised. But if it hits that 10K mark, then I think it could easily go higher than that.
Yeah, well, that's right.
That's
I mean,
kind
if
of
you've
where I'm
got
at.
yeah, if you've got two people tangoing at 10K, they could easily be the type of people that you were talking about, Coleman, and be willing to push it to 20 or beyond, you know, or that doesn't happen. You know, it's tough to say.
Yeah, exactly. Tough to say.
Because I don't think it's even really our crowd per se that when I say our crowd, I'm talking about, you know, the people in the Facebook group and the typical gamer kind of collecting community. I don't know if that's even really the buyer here. I think the buyer is Pokemon people, and so it's hard for me to get a read on exactly what they do or don't like.
And I'll say my 5K number is what I view as a ceiling. I think it could go for below that. It could very well go, be blown out of the water above that.
Yeah.
All right, so we got our last Friday piece. I think is one of the most significant ones of the auction. The 2 top box art, Gex, and this one is School Patrol. This is another fun one where it's great seeing some of the artists consign their pieces. Up until this was consigned, I was unaware that the artist was Del Thompson. He had it on his website, so I think in the last year or two, information had trickled out a little bit, but it was new to me. So it's fun seeing art like this come to auction from the artists, especially when it's, I had talked with Peter before, but this being just completely new is pretty exciting.
And talk about one that clearly is not faded. Like, the colors are deep and saturated on this, even with, you know, if there is really kind of intense flash on the photography used or whatever, it hasn't affected this piece. Like, the reds are red and the blues are blue, and like it's you know, and a nice animated lifelike characters. It's you know, got a bit of a darker kids, but a bit of a darker theme too, so that's cool. It's a well-known title. It's sort of an offshoot or sequel to Zombie Ate My Neighbors, so that's neat. It's a bit of a collectible title, Super Nintendo. It's got a lot of things going for it. I used to look at it and just kind of wonder, like, I wasn't quite clear on what the kind of lemon-shaped thing in the background was, and then thinking about it, because I haven't played the title, but thinking about Zombies Ate My Neighbors, there's those like portals between the levels, and I think that's what that must be. That must be like a place for them to kind of hop in and out of. The only thing there that I wish is, like, on the left side of that portal, it's like convex, and on the right side it's concave, right? I wish kind of that draws my eye a little bit.
I didn't see that.
You know, and I do wish that the gun barrel was like less curved upwards. I think it looks a little awkward. I'd like that to be straighter, I think, kind of like her crossbow. But all in all, you know, I mean, those are minor nitpicks, because all in all, you've got a beautiful composition, lots of color, great characters, lots going on in the image. Like, there's a lot to like about it. And, you know, this is one where, you know, if it didn't get 20, I think that'd be disappointing. Like, I see this kind of 20, 30, something like that.
You know, you're talking about the colors and the fading. I really like, you know, the lighting. You were saying the dark.
Yeah.
You can feel the light and the contrast. Like, the darks are dark, the lights are light. Like, you can really, like, feel the glow and almost the heat from the portal. Like you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, you know.
Yeah, and part of that is the shadows of the legs and on the little devil figure, right? Like you
Yeah.
can, it's telling your brain like this is bright.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I come back to is like I told you guys my frame of mind for the Gex, right? If I receive this in hand, am I going to be satisfied? Am I going to be let down? Am I going to be excited? And so all I can think about with Ghoul Patrol is if I get this in hand, I'm going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
If someone spends 20, whether 18, 20, 25,
Yeah.
15, any number that you spend, if you're comfortable spending that amount, when you get it in hand, you're going to be like, yep, this lives up to my expectations. I'm going to go buy more game art, right?
Yeah.
This is that. It looks very impressive.
I like this tower here, like just the vertical, just the feeling of it, just like looming above you, you know, and all these details on the whole castle. It's quite nice.
Yeah. The castle work kind of reminds me a little bit of the Super Nintendo Dragon's Lair cover there too, with the castle and the open drawbridge as well, kind of similar motif.
Yeah, it's beautiful art, and it's Lucas Arts as well, Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And Zombies Ate My Neighbors, so
Yeah.
2 Ghoul Patrol, you know, kind of a known series and stuff. And so I guess the first one actually would have been Konami as the publisher for Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This one, I guess, doesn't have the Konami association by publisher, but by history, you know, so it gives a little bit of something. But it's a great piece. It's a little smaller.
I was gonna say
15 by 12. But
is that the image or the board?
Shit, I don't know. Probably the image.
Image area of just over 15 by 12.
So again, you know, you got to round that up an inch on either side. So we're probably talking 14 by 17 board. It's not that, and with a little bit of border, it's not like it's on the smaller side, but it's not. You're not going to get it and look at it like it's a trading card. Like it's
funny,
it's a decent.
Yeah,
it's a
actually,
decent
I guess you
size.
think about it. A 14 by 17 Itoya is a pretty hefty looking thing.
Yeah, it's not
right?
a bad.
It's like I'm at my mom's house today. I don't have all.
I think
all
that's
the
like your
props and
Final
things.
Fantasy on the wall behind you, right?
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy
It's like
original
14
there.
by 17,
Oh,
right?
it's a mono for sure. And you know, I don't have my well, Dan's always the one with the props, right? But sometimes just holding up.
Not today.
Here's what an 11 by 17 comic page is, right? Here's a 14 by 17 Itoya. Sorry, Itoya being a brand of a portfolio book you can flip through. Anyway, I think this will be whoever wins this at whatever pricing will be very happy with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's one where, you know, if you do end up overpaying a little or underpaying, whatever the case is, you're going to get it in hand and you're going to feel like, yeah, you know, I'm happy with what I got. Because I just, there's no question marks on this one.
So,
you know,
if we are talking, we're probably about an hour right now. And if we jump to the Saturday pieces, as we talk about, are there questions? Are there not questions? Right? No questions about this piece. If you jump ahead to Saturday, the first lot that starts it off, and so we're not going to go through all the Saturday pieces. We might run through a more general discussion at this point to wrap things up. But it does start off with a piece by Simon Bisley, a great UK artist, and for Fur Fighters. And it's a PlayStation 2 cover. This is the one I blanked on earlier about it's significantly.
It's right at the end of the auction, Coleman.
Yeah, but I thought we said page.
Yeah, maybe your page numbers.
Something went weird here.
We'll just go to the end of it.
But you know, the Fur Fighters thing is
there we go.
The published image incredibly cropped in, like how they made it for the actual box, right? This is certainly uncropped. And there's a magazine ad that has this whole image, a scene of kind of carnage behind the teddy bear and stuff. But to Dan's comment just a second ago on the Ghoul Patrol, right? There's no questions there. You see it, it's well framed, you're happy with it, you know what you're getting. This one, now Simon Bisley, awesome artist. I like a lot of the stuff once you start looking at the detail of this. But this thing is 23 by 32 for the image area in a 30 by 39 frame. But the actual image of the bear and that scene in the room, there is so much black space built into the image that takes away from the fantastic work right in the center. And I know that's a mental hurdle for me, is like, I like the image, I like the artist, but then I zoom out and look at the whole thing and just, it's not as compelling.
It's not as captivating. It doesn't draw you in the same way. It's the same sort of thing that I was discussing with Archon 2. Like, I wish there wasn't all that dead space. And this, as you said, when you zoom in, like, it's awesome. There's so much going on in the background. And it's funny, right? Like, the girl's been smashed through the window. There's a knife in her back. And she's standing on a dead elephant or a dead elephant toy or something. Like, there's all this stuff going on in the background that is wonderful and wonderfully done when you zoom in. But that's the problem, is you have to zoom in. There's all this dead space. If it was just the central area, I'd be a bidder and I'd be bidding a fair bit, I think. But like this, like, I'm probably not a bidder.
Yeah. But hey, if those negatives lead to a lower price, I think someone's gonna, like, I think happiness is a function of price too, right? If someone wins this for 3,000, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
right?
and you can't get much of Bisley anything for 3,000. He's a well-known artist outside of games.
I think this has got to go above that. Who knows, right? But I mean, I think there's a good potential here for someone just to get, because of the negative and the things that detract from it, to get a published PlayStation 2 box art by a famed artist, which happens to be Frame. I'd probably take it out the mat, frame it closer. I'd probably I'd cover up some of the black with a matte. But I think there's a lot of potential for someone to end up happy with this, just because of the like you said, Dan, you won't be a bidder because of some of these factors, right?
Yeah. I mean, I see it as kind of under 5 because of, the dead space issue. But somebody that doesn't care if they do crop it in when they frame it or whatever, like you said, is going to get a piece that looks great. It did sell a couple times in the past at Clink, and I want to.
It was on Heritage, actually.
I swear it sold once on Clink too.
It's been around.
Yeah, there's been at least 2 sales of this in the past, and this is going back a number of years. I want to say probably 4 years, and I like, at least for the Clink sale. I don't know about the Heritage sale, but for the Clink sale, and I could be getting the dates wildly wrong, so forgive me, everybody, but I want to say it was like 4 or 5 years ago, and I want to say it sold for like $2,000 or something. What was the Heritage sale?
I was remembering the Heritage sale is about $2,000 in 2017, but
okay.
I haven't checked it in a few weeks. I don't remember.
2017. That's a while ago now.
There's quite a bit of Bisley's preliminary work for Fur Fighters on Heritage, the historical results. None of them are called Fur Fighters. You just search like Simon Bisley Bear. And because they didn't know what the fuck it was, Psycho Bear, I think is what they called it, right? So you have all these Psycho Bear prelims, and I'm pretty sure they're all Fur Fighter stuff that was just mislabeled. But if you ever dig back in Heritage results, there's $50 pencil stuff, kind of neat. So some of the other stuff that's in Saturday, whether we load up the lots or just talk about it or not, there's a few consignments. This is one where it's unreleased art, or it's rejected art, unused art. So this one, Gordo 106, is it was slated to be a Super Nintendo release. It never came out. It was published for Atari Lynx, right? So these are prelims for a game that was unreleased for the Super Nintendo. Also in this auction, there are a couple pieces where it was that it was a painting that was ultimately not used, right? So not this auction, the Imperium Super Nintendo game, right? There's a fully painted Imperium piece that's, unused for the published. And there's a few examples like that throughout the Saturday auctions.
Should I jump around here, or
Sure.
how do you want to?
Anyone, wherever we want to go. I mean, just kind of top line thoughts, right? There are a few examples of that.
Yeah, and we've got another, well, I guess a few more Rocos. That Batman Beyond one is another one where he's kind of taken a similar motif to the published box. So, that's, to me, that's probably the second best of the Roco pieces.
Yeah.
Um,
And so far, it's showing in the price too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's still early bidding, right? But I mean, this one's I can't above 300, I think. And
I don't like the Joker in the background. I
don't
don't like that at all. Like, the
Yeah.
Batman figure is wonderful, but when you look at the Joker, like, the smile is too high up on the face. Like, it's too close to the eyes compared to where the chin is, you know?
I think for me,
And
it's too much attention on the Joker. Like they're
that's
they're
because of the color choice.
right. They're at the same, like, it's not a lighter color. It's not in the background. You see some artists will like put the face in the clouds, and I think this is well, uh,
Yeah, let's move on.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think it. I mean, like,
someone's going to be happy with it.
yeah, I think for Batman, yeah, people will be happy with it. The one here of the Saturday stuff that's a little confusing. I think you're about to click on it, Coleman. The Skeleton Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So it's labeled as PlayStation and Sega Saturn. I don't know. Right? I've never seen the image anywhere. I don't know its history, to say like, oh, this was going. Sometimes you'll buy something from an artist and they'll tell you, like the Imperium piece, right? Hey, I was commissioned for this to be the box art. They didn't use it. Here's the unused painting. Or you'll find the unused painting in a magazine or somewhere. But some of the shortfalls sometimes of a consignment is, depending on what the consignor tells the auction house, good and bad. Sometimes extra details get in there that shouldn't. Sometimes there's a lack of details. So this one, because I don't know the personal backstory of the history of the piece, inklings of where it might have come from, but I don't know what the PlayStation Sega Saturn connection is.
Yeah, and I mean, we know that title came out for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, but we also know that it was a toy line. So is it for the toy line or is it for the game? Hard to say. We can't see the image anywhere published online. To your point about having inklings of where it came from, I have those inklings too. I think we've discussed that. And so I tend to be on the side of, just based on where it came from, it's probably for the game. But I just wish there was something that I could use to confirm that. I'm guessing. Now, it is a cool image, and it's interesting way it's put together. Like, the description calls it a collage, so I guess the background, it's
This
part
looks
art,
like a photo.
Yeah, it's a collage. Yeah, so part art, part photo, part this, part that. So it's neat, and I like the composition with the way it comes down to kind of the central fight in the point of a triangle. But I wish I knew a little more about it.
Yeah, I wish the other thing too that the way Heritage shoots most things is, for games, you now get a picture of the front and a picture of the back. Some other auction houses will do pictures of all 6 sides. For artwork, Heritage does the front. Sometimes they'll do a cropped in picture of the main image, and then they'll do a second picture that shows the fuller board, not cropped. Sometimes in fine art or other categories, they might take pictures of the back. But here, this is where I wish they would take a picture of the back. There's lots of illustration board, just fucking blank. There's nothing there. Sometimes an artist would have notations over who the client was, the year, other things like that, that if they chose to take the picture or not, I would like to see those details in the description, right? Of just kind of, hey, 1996 date noted on the back. Or, back of illustration board blank. But oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, we're fortunate that Heritage generally does a good job, and that they are carrying the material, and like it's wonderful to the great people. It's wonderful to have them around. But yeah, if they're willing to take constructive criticism, that's what we would say.
There we go.
Awesome, guys. So I think we're kind of getting close to wrapping it up here. Hey, we were going to do, what was it, like a half hour or 45 minutes at the most? And I think we've gone an hour and a half or something. So probably time to wrap it up. But looking forward to seeing you guys again for the next one. I know we're planning on having a very special guest soon on the next episode. So assuming that all works out, we'll fill in more details about that shortly. Please remember to, as always, check the Facebook group, which is Original Video Game Art Collectors. And, of course, the website is, Sanford, remind me, is it originalvideogameart.com? I think it is, right?
Yeah, we couldn't get the obga.com.
Yeah. Too shortened. Yeah. Check those out as always, and warm up your piggy banks. Auction coming soon.
The last, my final sign-off comment, anyone who makes it this far, if you're interested in this kind of art, take a moment, make an account at Heritage. I think there will be some things here that end up underselling, and there's going to be people that afterward will have gone, oh, I would have paid that. Make the account, consider watching the auction Friday. I think Saturday especially, there's going to be less eyes. Some things will get overlooked. We clearly didn't even cover all the Saturday pieces. I think if you're interested, make an account, watch. Just by watching, you'll have a sense of what it's like, what the process is, what's available. It's a fun hobby, and I'm excited to see the auction this upcoming week.
Yeah, great comments, Sanford. Absolutely. Yeah.
All kinds of good stuff on the way.
Alrighty.
Cool, guys.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Hey.
Good seeing you
See you
all.
Next time.
Bye, everybody.